Hey everyone, I just have a short lesson for you today. What we're going to be doing is we're going to continue talking about measurement, specifically how to measure the length, how long something is. Now we just started this unit and we were talking about inches and feet, but today I'm also going to introduce you to something new called yards. These are the three forms of measurement that we're going to be focusing on in third grade: inches, feet, and yards. So let's talk about inches first. We know from practicing already, an inch is something that you will find on a ruler. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give you guys these ideas of something you can reference in your head if you're having trouble picturing an inch. Say you don't have a ruler with you. So something you can also picture is a quarter. So if you have a quarter, you know how big a quarter is. That's about an inch. Okay, from one side to the other is about an inch. So that's something that you can think about if you wanted to figure out how big something is. You would use something in inches. You could picture a quarter. Then we have feet. A foot, as Gage pointed out the other day in our meeting, is 12 inches. It's the length of a ruler. Okay. Another good estimate could be a loaf of bread. So that could be another way. If you can't picture a ruler, picture a loaf of bread that you would buy at a store. That's about a foot. So we have inches, about this big. We have a foot, which is about a loaf of a bread or a ruler. And then we have yards. Now, I don't have a yardstick with me because I don't have any of my supplies. But a good measuring tool you can use is to picture the width of a doorway. So let me show you. So if I was to look at the width, let me see if I can do this, of the door frame right there, okay? You guys know what a door looks like. So that's about a yard. So those are the three things. Inches, about the size of a quarter. Foot, which is 12 inches, size of a ruler or a loaf of bread. And and a yard, which is the width of a door frame. So those are the three things. So if I had to put those in order from smallest to biggest, what would be first? Inch, foot, or yard? What would be the smallest? It would be an inch. Then what would be in the middle? A foot. And what would be at the end? A yard. Okay. So from smallest to biggest, we have an inch, we have a foot, and then we have a yard. Now, what we're going to be practicing today is how to estimate. We've done some estimation this year. An estimate is when you are making an educated guess about how long something could be. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to make sense, okay? This is what we've practiced in the classroom. When we come up with a math answer, we need to ask ourselves, is my answer reasonable? Does it make sense? Or am I just completely off base here? So for example, if I was to say I need to figure out the length of this candle, I would have to decide what I want to use to measure this. Well, I have inches, feet, and yards. Would it make sense for me to pick a yard stick to measure this? Remember, a yard is the length or the width of a door frame, something that is bigger than me. Would it make sense to be using a measuring tool that's larger than me to measure this candle? No, not at all. Okay, way too big. Would it make sense to use a ruler? Would it make sense to use a foot, about the size of a loaf of bread, the length of it, to measure this candle? Too big. What about inches, size of roughly a quarter? Would that make sense to measure this? Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. Now, if I had to make a rough estimate of about how many I think it is, I could probably line this up. Say, okay, well, I'm going to visualize in my head about how many of these quarters it would take me to measure the length of this. What do you guys think? How many inches do you think this is? All right, let's see. So here's the first spot is. Let's see if I can do this with my fingers. Okay, I'm going to place a finger where the quarter ends and then move it to where it started. Trying to do this. It's about 2.5 of these, I would say. 1, 2, and then about a half. So it's probably about 2.5 inches would be my estimate there. Last thing I want to tell you guys about is something we kind of just talked about. It's about picking the right tool to do these estimations or measuring. It makes sense to pick a tool let me go backwards. It makes sense. We're going to pick a right measuring tool, like a ruler, okay? Could be a yardstick, could be a ruler. A ruler would have inches or feet on it. But we want to pick the right unit of measurement. We want to decide if it makes sense to use inches, feet, or yards. Now, if I'm going to measure something small, like this candle, it makes sense to use inches. If I'm going to use something a little bit larger, maybe like a book, okay, it might make sense to use feet, depending how big that book is. Or maybe I want to measure me. Maybe I want to see how tall I am. It probably would make sense to use feet, okay? If I want to measure something larger, maybe like the width of a football field, and my football friends out there, think about how they talk about football, right? How many yards they have to go before they get a touchdown. Yards is a measurement used with a bigger distance. So the larger the object is, the larger a unit we're going to be using. So if we're using something large, we're going to pick a larger unit like a yard. If it's, bigger than, I'm going to go back. If we're going to measure something smaller, like a candle, we're probably going to be using inches. Maybe I want to measure my finger. I would probably use inches. And then if we were going to measure something a little bit bigger but not humongous, we're probably going to use feet. Okay? So we're going to be practicing today picking the right unit of measurement and then some estimation. And that's what you're going to be doing today in your practice pages. Okay? Practice continuing measuring when you can. Please don't forget to do that extra math for me. Okay?